Hey, it's Charlie from Moto, and this weekend I've been getting back to my roots here on two skis and a track. Despite reviewing many motorcycles these days and other power sports products, I grew up riding snowmobiles. That's where my heart lies, and for those of you who haven't been on a snow machine, depending on your regional vernacular, it's a unique experience. It's essentially like combining a jet ski and a four-wheeler and a motorcycle, all kind of one. What it really comes down to is what the snow conditions are like. That's going to change whether this feels a little bit more like riding a quad or a little bit more like riding a jet ski. But it's a very unique experience. And snowmobiles both allow you to get a huge adrenaline boost, but also enjoy some beautiful parts of nature in the winter months. So I've traveled back to northern Michigan. It is early March. And because you can't control the weather, it's been a little wet this weekend. I was hoping for a beautiful, snowy, a little bit late season ride here. It's still winter technically, but got a little bit of warmer weather, got some rain, which you'll see in some of the other footage throughout this video. But it hasn't stopped me from enjoying this, one of Skidoo's flagship models, the Backcountry XRS 850 Turbo R. Now, there's going to be two sort of people who stumble upon this review. You're either going to be a subscriber and you're going to have no idea what we're looking at here in front of us, or you're going to be a hardcore rider and you're going to find this through search and you're going to know exactly what we're looking at here. So I'm going to kind of try to tailor this review toward both of you. And I will get right out in front of it. This last few years after we moved to California has been the longest that I've ever gone without snowmobiling in my entire life. So dare I say I am a little bit out of the game, especially compared to motorcycle reviews these days, but there's a lot going on here with Skidoo's 850 Turbo R Backcountry, especially in this top-level XRS trim. So today we're going to focus on three things. We're going to focus on this sled right here in front of us, exactly what you're seeing. We're going to focus on Skidoo's lineup in general, including the other backcountry models. And we're going to talk a little bit specifically about this 850 Turbo R engine and whether you should option it for about an extra $5,000 over just the standard 850 E-Tech. First things first, this is about $22,000 before you get into freight and prep fees at the dealership, taxes, everything like that. So it's about as much as you can spend on a snowmobile. It's getting right up in that top echelon there. But for that, you are getting the best of what Skidoo has to offer in a 50/50 sled that's geared slightly more toward trail riding. Because for 2026, as this model year is, you can get the 43-inch ski option for the backcountry models. So if you've been a little bit out of the snowmobile game, as I have for a few years, Skidoo has the MXZ and the Renegade now, which are both 137-inch tracks, MXZ being their trail sleds with 2 strokes, Renegades being their trail sleds with 4-stroke engines. Then what used to be a little bit more of the Renegade is now the Backcountry. The Backcountry coming with a 146-inch flat track, so we don't have any tipped up rails or anything here like you get with some of the other brands. But this is the model line now that they recommend for going out and doing mixed sort of riding. You get a choice of the 2 strokes all the way down from the 600 EFI non-direct injection engine all the way up to this 850 E-Tech Turbo R, which is a 2-stroke turbocharged engine. You don't see that too much in the motor world. In fact, you don't really see 2 strokes at all outside of power sports these days. You really don't even see them much in motorcycling. But you can also get the 600 Double R for 2027. That is a new 135 horsepower direct injection 600cc twin 2-stroke again. And then you can also get the 850 E-Tech without the turbo. The turbo is giving you about 180 horsepower, but because it's forced induction, you can get that 180 horsepower all the way up to 8,000 feet of altitude. And then it falls off a lot less dramatically from there compared to the naturally aspirated models. So the 850 E-Tech, the non-turbo R, is making about 165 horsepower at sea level, but obviously that drops down as you get to areas with less oxygen. But we're going to talk about the engines a little bit more later on. Other changes you're seeing for 2026, which this is a spring order sled, so you'd already be putting in your orders for the 2027 model, but maybe you're seeing one of these on a dealer floor or something like that. You can get this fun blue color. You can also get more of a generic black. You're also getting this optional 43-inch ski stance, which makes this a little bit more friendly on trail. You've got a rack steering system for the X and XRS models, which is supposed to stabilize your steering a little bit more, make it a little more confident in rough trail. And I can say, throughout a lot of the rough trail we rode this weekend, it was very stable and took the bumps extremely well with these KYB shocks. Other additions for 26 is this gauge pod screen, I guess is the best way to call it here. It's a screen that we've been seeing on a lot of Can-Am products now. We saw it on the Can-Am Origin electric motorcycle. We saw it on the Can-Am Maverick side-by-side, and now we're seeing it here on the snowmobile. And what's new is you got this navigation, which I think has taken a sec to wake up here, but it's a really nice, clear, crisp, high-def screen, and you can see not only navigation, but you can add your friends, and if you're doing a group ride or something like that, you can see their little indicators show up on the map. So now you can see I don't have my phone connected or anything, and we're still getting live navigation readout, showing me my breadcrumbs, where I've been, and other trails. And again, if I had added people, my group here, be able to add that and then see them riding along. Pretty nifty. So let's get this thing started up, talk a little bit more about the sled. I'm actually just having trouble getting enough air to talk to you guys here in my helmet. I'm all buttoned up. It's not like my motorcycle helmet that breathes more. Pretty nifty starter mechanism that you get standard on the XRS and optional on the Backcountry X. It's called Shot Start. It's essentially, instead of having a battery on board to add weight and complexity, you have a capacitor. So you have to pull start the sled for the very first time in the morning, but then every time after that, the capacitor holds electric charge and is enough to start the engine with the click of a button. Very cool, especially consider if you're riding this thing in deeper snow and you get stuck and you're way in deep snow or something like that. Very difficult to pull start your sled, depending on your angle. Start it right up, but you don't have the weight of a battery. So I fully understand that at about $22,000 and spring order only, the XRS is a little bit more of a niche model. But the backcountry lineup in general from Skidoo is compelling for anyone who doesn't know what sort of riding they're going to be doing on a given weekend. And I think this is a perfect example, being up here in northern Michigan. We had a lot of trail yesterday. We went up to the Upper Peninsula, rode some great trails. And then other days, I'm out here in the fields, and I didn't know what the weather was going to be like. It would have been entirely possible for the rain that came through yesterday to be snow. Would have dropped 6 to 12 inches of fresh powder, and then having these new skis, wider skis, 146-inch track, I'd be able to float around, play around off trail, no problem. And then with that new 43-inch wide ski stance, be able to go back on trail and be a lot more planted. Here's another great example. This is a trail I used to go on a lot when I was younger. No idea what it's going to be like. So with the backcountry, I can take it nice and slow, despite this being still decently deep. Track sticking down. Got to float it around a little bit here. Woo! Oh, there's a house back here now. That is an interesting aspect of snowmobiling, is you'll go and ride a trail or a field that you hadn't ridden in many years. All of a sudden, there's a house. Huh. 2 houses. Interesting. My brother and I used to drag race through this field. Looks like it's still usable, though. Oh yeah, nice and deep. Still pretty easy to get this thing up on the side. Now, we actually ran around yesterday with a free ride, a Skidoo free ride. Had the much narrower ski stance, different gearing, and that was the 850. Just a normal E-Tech. That was definitely less stable on the trails, but a little more fun and playful. But say you want to be able to go and do this sort of riding where you don't know what your day's gonna lead you to, but you don't want to drop $22,000 on the XRS. Well, Skidoo's got the Backcountry X, which is still spring order, That'll get you the 850 E-Tech. It's still 165 horsepower, and as we'll talk about a little bit more later in the video, plenty of power for these lower elevation type rides. And that X package is still getting you plenty of the goodies that you get here on the XRS. You still get the newer tracks, you still get the newer skis, you still get plenty of power, great suspension. You can still get the optional screen. You can still get the shot start. You just got to pay extra for a lot of those. But that's a much more reasonable price, I think about $16,000. And you can also get this XRS with the 850 E-Tech for closer to 17 or 18, so much more reasonable than the Turbo. Although there are still some sneaky options, like you don't get the shot start standard with the normal 850 E-Tech. Man, it's just crazy when you come down from a big hill or jump like that, how soft you land with these XRS shocks. So what if you don't want a spring order? What if you just want a sled that's going to get you through normal mixed use riding from Skidoo? Well, that's where the Backcountry Adrenaline comes into play. And that is actually essentially the sled that I've ridden as my main rider for most of my adult life. It's a 2010 Renegade Backcountry 600 E-Tech. So no super fancy shocks, just some basic rebuildable, I think they're KYBs. It's just about 120 horsepower or so, nothing too crazy, but nice gearing in this backcountry package. So if you're riding trail or off trail like this, you still get a lot of that punch. Bigger lug track and a much more reasonable price. Now you do get a smaller screen, you don't get the shot start, you don't get some of those extra goodies, but you can still go out and have a ton of fun on the snow for much more reasonable price. And now Skidoo has that new 800 R motor that you get in the Backcountry Renegade for 2027. That's a perfect amount of power, I would say, for most flatland trail like this. It's not really until you get up in the deep powder in the mountains or really far off trail, or you just have to have the top level model to where you really need the power from the 850. And then if you really want to pinch pennies, you've got the basic Backcountry Sport that comes with the fuel injected but port injection 600cc engine, 85 horsepower. It's gonna fall on its face a little bit if you're trying to really mess around with it in the deep stuff, but again, you're still gonna have a good time. I think it's only starting around $10,000, maybe about $10,500, and still giving you the playfulness and the agility of the backcountry. Oh, but you're not gonna have that lift right there from this big, burly, turbocharged, woohoo, two-stroke engine. This is an uncoupled rear suspension, which means it's gonna push the weight transfer right back, and I could even adjust the limiter strap some to really get it to lift. Now, mind you, you do add a little bit of front ski weight with that turbocharger in there, so it might not feel quite as front happy as some of the other sort of backcountry style sleds that you might be familiar with. And that's another reason why I kind of say, hey, if you're not really taking this thing to elevation or pushing it across the lake at top speed, maybe just get yourself the normal 850. But as you will see right now, the XRS Backcountry is no slouch. The 43-inch ski models get two new track options, the Storm 150 and the Ice Storm 150. This is the Storm, so we're not getting any sort of studs. But, as you can see from that speedo, very, very capable at high speeds. And importantly, very stable as well. That wider ski stance, the long track, and the great suspension. Now the track's kind of nifty because you got 1.5 lugs in the center and 1.25 lugs on the side. It's supposed to help trail rotation a little bit there while keeping a degree of flotation. Still only a 15-inch wide track though. I kind of missed the 16-inch wide tracks that I had on my Backcountry Renegade, but they must have found that those were not ideal. So like I said, for most of the weekend we were up in the UP riding, so I'm going to drop some of that footage here from those trails. Hopefully the camera's not too wet. All right, out here on some good open stretch of trail. Let's open it up. Oh. And if you're a rider who really cares about being able to pull well into the triple digits like that, then you get the turbo. Well into the triple digits and at so many different elevation. I mean, we're only at about 1,000 feet right now, but you could take this all the way up to 8,000 and still be getting that power level, and that's where the real party piece of the turbo is. But so far, riding throughout the day here, you can really see how granular Ski-Doo has their entire sled lineup here. I mean, you've got all the way from their MXZs, you know, very clearly trail sleds, and then you got the Renegades, which are now just 4 strokes, but trail sleds. And then this Backcountry, especially with the wider ski stance now, is made to fill in kind of where the Renegade itself used to be. Obviously they introduced Renegade Backcountry a little while ago, and then now Renegade is pretty much just a trail sled, and Backcountry itself is its own line that's supposed to be kind of these 50-50 setups. But then riders were clamoring for a little bit more of a trail setup for the Backcountry, and that's why they give you this 43-inch ski width option. And it's been cool to be able to ride today back to back with a free ride, because the free ride is more so screwing around off trail, a little bit less trail oriented. It's got the narrower ski stance, a little different ergos, and also lighter, not being this turbo model. And yeah, can you, whoa! Man, some of these trails are getting rough. Can you ride one of those, something like a free ride on the trail? Absolutely. I mean, it's sitting way up there, that distant black blob in front of us, so doing no problem. But when he got on the Backcountry here, he said, oh yeah, feels a good bit more planted, and this is just taking the bumps that much better. Not to mention with the free ride there, you've got the minimal wind protection, and you've got the gauge screen pod that's facing straight up so that you can see it well when you're standing. But thing is, well, I mean, I guess this is a little bit harder to see while I'm standing, but I mean, I get where they're going with the free ride. That's a sled that's more intended to be standing up than sitting down. And then you've got the full-on Summit models with the long track and, you know, for the deep snow, standing most of the time also. So Ski-Doo is so far and beyond the industry leader right now when it comes to sleds. They had a look at their lineup and they said, all right, well, what are people looking for? What could we really fine-tooth comb even further here in our lineup? And the answer was this wider Backcountry model. And I gotta say, for a ride like today, going through the trails here in the UP, being able to pull off and play around, have a good bit of fun, and then come right back on trail, not worry about if the snow is low or if the snow is deep, really have that overall capability, I get it. This makes sense. What's really impressed me the most throughout the day here on the Backcountry XRS is the shock package. Oh my goodness, out of everything we have here, and there are some expensive sleds in high quality suspension setups here riding today, but this is sort of that end of the season chop that we got on the trails, and this sled's taking it so well. I was worried that being the XRS, being such an aggressive package, it was going to be stiff no matter what, but that is really not the case. I can eat up these bumps. I've got the front clickers turned down, and it's just taking it really well, even compared to the free ride. Both of us commented that one's riding stiff, especially in the rear. This one, that new suspension technology, just really taking it well. And then again, here you dip right off, and we're not dealing with a bunch of loose, super fresh powder or anything, but there's a freedom to just not being too worried about where the snow depth is here. Skis carrying through nicely. And then, woo, yeah, good flotation. This track is kind of nifty in that in the center, I'm pretty sure, at least on this storm track, oh yeah, pulling right up. The center of the storm track is at a 1.5 inch lug, and the outside is at a 1.25, which is supposed to be able to encourage flotation and push from the middle there, while also encouraging rotation from the outside. And again, for the type of rider who just really doesn't know what type of riding they're going to be doing on any given weekend, especially with how our winters have been, this package makes a lot of sense. And then you get into an opening like that and just but it's not only the power, it's having the suspension and the sled around you to handle whatever comes at you when you're going those speeds. Now, it is tough evaluating a sled on a limited time with it like this. Now, we're putting on a lot of miles here this weekend, but we're kind of dealing with just one situation of snow, and that is above freezing temps, where everything is slipping and sliding. We're pushing it around. Today's been a little better up here in the upper peninsula. Yesterday, down in the lower peninsula, we just really weren't getting the hookup that we were wanting from this track. And then in the corners, it's darting and pushing around. Of course, relatively speaking, but still. Today's a little bit better. The snow's a little bit fresher. Temps are just slightly lower. But still, I mean, right there, you give it the beans and you can feel it kind of kick out. We've got a new rack steering system here on the XRS. I believe you get it in the Backcountry X as well. It's supposed to stabilize steering and chop when you're going through rougher sections. And we also have a new ski. And I will say it's grabbing around a little bit. We could kind of see the argument for dual runners on here. Well, the rain is really starting to pick up here, so if it gets better, we'll re-record this, but if not, this is what we've got to work with. So hopefully y'all can see okay. This is just the unfortunate truth of our sport. You never know what you're gonna deal with. This is March 7th, I believe, 2026. And it is actually, there is a bit of a freeze to the rain. I can feel it. We're kind of coming up here toward the Lake Superior coast, heading up to Paradise and then over to Quamanon Falls. It might be snowing on us by the end of today, so there's a possibility you don't see any of this footage and it's all beautiful white snow and ice, but we'll see. It does give us a good opportunity to talk about the general ergos here on the Backcountry XRS, and a lot of this applies to all of the newer Rev Gen 5 sleds here from Skidoo. You do definitely sit up and on the sled. It's almost a perched riding position. The handlebars are low, and the seat really puts you up in the air. I go back and forth between that. I understand that they're trying to get the rider isolated from the bumps and kind of centered in between the impact points. And this, at the end of the day, this isn't a touring sled, so I'm not trying to be just like, you know, touring comfortable sort of thing. But even our Grand Touring Skidoo sits in kind of a similar way. So it is a bit of a reality for these Gen 5 sleds. So let's talk about this 850, specifically the Turbo R. I have yet to mention, but this is a water-cooled engine. That means you actually have a methanol mixture that you fill up on the back of the sled there. And it's only methanol because you don't want normal water to freeze, but it's only the water doing the cooling effect on the engine. And it actually, in place of an intercooler, it keeps the engine temps cool, the intake temps, as the turbo's running hard. So as you're doing at least about a 12-second pull, so you got to think deep snow, mountains, climb, maybe a lake run, something like that, where you're full throttle for a long period of time, really keeping that turbo engaged. That is where the water cooling comes into effect. Before that, it's not doing anything. So if you're just chilling, easy riding, family, kind of slower trail, anything like that, you're not using up that methanol mixture from Skidoo. So you don't have to worry that it's constantly going to be another expense you have to be concerned with. But then it's just a normal 850 E-Tech with a turbo on it. The 850 E-Tech was always designed from the get-go to become turbocharged at some point. So they didn't have to change the motor. They didn't have to change the compression ratio or anything. It's just the same 850 E-Tech that powers their other two strokes, but with a turbo. Now that being said, if you're not running it at high power regularly or up in the mountains at elevation, you're just not going to see the advantages all that much. We had the 850 E-Tech on the free ride over the weekend, and like I said, the gearing is different, the track is different, but even running through those high-speed Upper Peninsula trails, I mean, yeah, we both noticed a little bit of a difference with the turbo, but not enough to really be a wake-up call and be a must-have, especially for the cost. So if you're a flatlander like us here in Michigan, 850 E-Tech, fantastic powertrain. And I do have to acknowledge, in full transparency, you can get some great engines from the other manufacturers too. We had an 850 Switchback Assault from Polaris on the ride. That 850 Patriot motor is a great engine as well, and the throttle response is fantastic, and despite it being a little bit more crude and rudimentary, it's not like it was sucking fuel that much faster than any of the other sleds, and he was able to keep right up and have a lot of fun, and that Polaris package is great too. So I know Skidoo's not going to love me saying that, but while Skidoo is by and large a leader in this industry, the sales leader and technology leader and everything, that's not to say that Polaris and Arctic aren't trying their darndest to keep up with them. All right, let's wrestle this over here. Whew. Gosh, you can just do so much with this package. One nifty little feature that comes standard on the XRS, which you might have to add to other sleds, are ice scratchers. They're little metal flip downs underneath the right by the track there. And we got rolling yesterday, a little bit warmer temps, a little bit harder snowpack on the trails, and all of our sleds were starting to get hot. Flip down those ice scratchers, immediately cooled right down. Very, very effective. These Gen 5 Rev chassis have an extra motor mount in there, an extra engine mount, and that's supposed to reduce NVH as well as belt and clutch wear. And you can really feel the refinement in this engine. It's not the most rowdy two-stroke engine on the market. It really isn't. But it does have that nice degree of refinement and performance. But a lot of what makes this sled so great is some of what just makes all Skidoos great. The gauge package, if you pay for it, the storage around the sled with the power points, the ergonomics. Now, I will say, you do sit up very high on this Rev Gen 5 platform. You're kind of way up above the windshield and the controls. You're kind of riding down on it, and that's to isolate the rider from bumps. But it is, even on our Grand Touring, which was a 2025, you do feel the effects, and it's just an interesting riding position compared to a lot of other sleds. But if you're someone who just was plopped on the face of the earth and said, I want the best snowmobile around for any sort of riding, not saying what sort of riding you're going to do, you just need the best sled in any kind of jack-of-all-trades scenario, this is what Skidoo has for you. The 850 E-Tech Turbo R Backcountry XRS. Not the best on trail, not the best off trail, not the fastest sled in the world, but able to span the largest range of riding and do the best at it very, very well. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the Backcountry XRS, check the link below. I'll put our No Talking ride. That's going to go up over on Winding Road Magazine. Big shout out to Skidoo, as well as Burt Lake Marina in Indian River, Michigan, for helping us out getting the sled here to northern Michigan. We'll put a link to them down in the description as well. If you guys do want to see more sled reviews, let me know. I might shoot more next winter and get out here, or maybe some rides out west, do a little bit more coverage, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from DM Moto, and as always, ride on.